In a recent YouTube video that went viral within days, I expressed the possibility that the much hyped Islam for UK group is in fact the covert operation of British intelligence, or at least a rogue offshoot of an earlier operation in Kosovo. Its purpose? To increase friction between Britons and Muslims as a way to continue support for the illegal Middle Eastern wars and to keep the overhyped threat of terrorism over the British people, so they'll look towards the Big Brother policies of their government to protect them. This may be hard for some to comprehend, but what I do know is the British people have been lied to about terrorism, Islam for UK, and the Islamification of Britain. It's all good giving the EDL, BNP, Islam for UK and United Against Fascism TV and newspaper time, but this is a womb of perception and fails to get to the root causes of this divide and rule operation. Next time you look at a riot or a Muslim extremist on TV espousing hatred, ask yourself why. Omar Bakri was born to wealthy Muslim parents in Syria. The family reportedly owned palaces all around the Middle East. Despite joining the Muslim Brotherhood during his teens, he did not take part in the 1982 revolt and had already left Syria on a round trip of studying in Lebanon, Egypt, Saudi Arabia and the United States, where he took English classes. In 1986, he had settled in London and helped grow a community of like-minded Muslims that wished to practice Islamic spirituality and social codes. By 1996, from a small gym on a London side street, Omar Bakri created a group that would play a fundamental role in the coming war on terror. It was known as Al-Mujahirun and would be linked to wars overseas and the 7/7 London bombings. But what took this group from the streets of London to the Middle East and to Kosovo and to a string of terrorist atrocities? The answer lies within our own government and intelligence agencies. It's no secret that silver spoon-born CIA asset Osama bin Laden and his ragtag of Muslim extremists were originally trained and funded by the American government to overthrow the Soviets in Afghanistan. Indeed, US National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski at the time said, "Your cause is right, God is on your side." A true manipulator who would go on to write a book entitled The Grand Chessboard. However, what isn't common knowledge is that the West continued to fund various Muslim factions for the next 2 decades. Michael Meacher, MP of Oldham, who are experiencing first-hand the Islamification of Britain, was sacked by the Labour Party in 2003 for, among other reasons, questioning the legitimacy of the Iraq War and the intelligence provided. He revealed in the Asian Guardian circulated in the UK that MI6 recruited Muslims in Britain for terror training abroad. Their purpose, he says, was to support US efforts to overthrow communist governments in Afghanistan and Kosovo, a continuation of the earlier US operations with bin Laden. He highlights a Delhi-based research foundation that estimates up to 200 UK Muslims could have been sent by MI6 to train in overseas terrorist camps under the protection of the Pakistani Secret Service. This was corroborated by former US Justice Department prosecutor and terror expert John Loftus, who was interviewed in July 2005. He told the Fox News Dayside show that back in the late 1990s, the Muslim leaders all worked for British intelligence in Kosovo. He said, "Believe it or not, British intelligence actually hired some Al-Qaeda guys to help defend the Muslim rights in Albania and in Kosovo. That's when al-Mujahirun got started. As shown in the book Them, Adventures with Extremists by investigative journalist John Ronson in 1997, Bakri's gym-based recruitment centre for al-Mujahirun was slowly gaining ground by indoctrinating local youths when they came to work out and learn to box. The charismatic leader would lecture would-be extremists and display militant videos calling for jihadist action. These innocent kids were groomed and radicalised, some of which would have been initially sent out to Kosovo and other conflicts to carry out the dirty work of British intelligence and neocon Tony Blair, and others that ended up staying and causing the conflict we see today in the UK. One young man that was radicalised during this British intelligence operation was Anjam Chowdhury, who would continue al-Mujahirun under the banner of Islam for UK. He went from layabout college student insulting Islam by smoking, drinking and reading pornography to hardline extremists calling for Sharia law in the UK. If you can't accept that our own Western governments would carry out these kinds of secret operations with terrorists, then bury your head in the sand, because it has happened on many occasions, as you can see.
In 2007, the whitehouse.gov, the White House website, put a press release out saying we're funding these 4 groups to stage attacks, and they didn't even debate that number 3 Al-Qaeda ran it. Al-Qaeda publicly works for our criminal government.
For those of you who weren't there last night, this is a case of state-sponsored terrorism. It's a case of a Western intelligence agency, which was MI6, the James Bonds of the world, going ahead and funding our terrorist enemies, Islamic extremist terrorists in Libya, in an attempt to try and assassinate a foreign head of state.
It was claimed by this Jundullah organization, which is simply a CIA MI6 secret army. It's a well-known front. Now, this was a very serious bombing attack. It was a...
If we go back to the timeline, what ensued was a string of terrorist attacks carried out by CIA and MI6 intelligence assets. Whether they'd gone rogue or not, our governments did nothing despite insurmountable evidence. As reported in the LA Times in the summer of 1998, CIA asset Osama bin Laden faxed MI6 asset Omar Bakri what the al-Mujahirun leader called bin Laden's 4 specific objectives for a holy war against the US. The instructions read: bring down their airliners, prevent the safe passage of their ships, occupy their embassies, and force the closure of their companies and banks. The LA Times remarked, bin Laden hasn't been shy about sharing his game plan. Yet 3 buildings still came down a little over 3 years later. Soon after, FBI agent Ken Williams grew concerned about Middle Eastern students training in Arizona flight schools. He linked several of them to the al-Mujahirun group. Then, in 1999, hook-handed Abu Hamza, who French sources claim was also an MI6 informant, told a rally of extremist Muslims in London, including Bakri, that they should attack aircraft over London and showed them a plan for doing so. The scheme was openly called the Muslim Anti-Aircraft Net. In July 2001, more information about suspicious Muslims learning to fly on US soil was released. Despite mounting evidence that something big was about to happen, the only person to forewarn the public about the 9/11 attacks was alternative talk show host Bill Cooper.
And I'm telling you, be prepared for a major attack. But it won't be Osama bin Laden. It will be those behind the New World Order. I wonder what Osama bin Laden's targets are supposed to be.
After the attacks, Al-Mujahideen member Mohammed Junaid, living in the US, says he will kill Americans in Afghanistan for the Taliban. Despite this, he is allowed to fly in and out of England on several occasions. In 2003, more Muslims on watch lists fly back and forth. This time they let off a suicide bomb in Israel. Why was this not prevented? Soon after, Pakistan warns England that future 7/7 bombers had ties to Al-Qaeda in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Britain does nothing. In 2004, 6 Muslim extremists are prevented from undertaking a fertilizer bomb plot, which Lieutenant Colonel Wild claimed was impossible without military expert help. And then a bombshell. After all that had gone on, Omar Bakri admits that extremists had made deals with Britain and attacks on England were inevitable. Still, nothing is done. Shortly after, in 2005, London is attacked.